As promised, this will be an accompanying video, just basically a brief go over to the points that we cover in the Kemetic Yoga Program, focus topics, which held in the Zenshin Studios, Birmingham. So in this video, the first topic that we covered on Monday the first topic that we focused in on was the breath and breathing. This vid won't cover all the expansive areas that we dived into in session, but what I do hope is that it just highlights certain points in a concise way, which will just allow you to kind of explore, expand and connect the dots yourself. So first, we need to agree why breathing is important and why it should be acknowledged and a focal point of anyone trying to grow, basically. Basically, breathing explains itself in terms of its necessity and its importance. If we pay attention, I put the breath at a very high level of nutrient. In terms of hierarchy of nutrients, the breath is way up there, only inferior, if there is such a term to be used, to light, but definitely higher than food and definitely higher than water. And nature shows us that just in the way we react to certain nutrients and the way we don't act or react when we're depleted of certain nutrients, and the breath speaks for itself. The lifespan is cut very, very short without it. But if we go right back to the start, I mean, breath determines the first and last step of the journey of life in this cycle. And it's highlighted right from birth. As you say, when the doctor smacks the arse, rightly or wrongly, of the babies, it's looking for that first breath. That first breath initiates life and determines that this being is alive and it's functional. Whether you're looking at biblical, any religious text, any spiritual doctrine, any arts or schools of thought, if they are serious, there is often high reference paid to the breath. And, you know, across various cultures, across various civilizations and antiquity, the breath has been labeled as different terms, not even labeled, but referred to in different ways and in oftentimes different paradigms of thought, which is important to note. So the breath is also referred to as prana, which a lot of people would pick up on along the way. Chi, it can be referred to as the chi, the external chi, which cultivates the inner chi or the energy. Life force, you know, or the active life force. The ankh, which again is just that life force of divine. And basically the breath is always seen as food for the spirit. Water is another level of nutrient for the chemical body, as we are dominated by, you know, chemistry. And then we have the physical food, which is food for the physical body, the material body. They all play their part and they all are comprised of each other, but just operating at different states, just like the human body. So the breath is food for the cultivation or consciousness of the spirit, and all we're really talking about is to bring the spirit to life within the being, because we're all alive. So, we all have spirit, we are all living a spiritual experience, but the level of your spiritual awareness often dictates the level of how you perceive reality or the connection you have to your reality, i.e. people, nature, science, judgments, mental thought patterns, disease, etc., etc. So basically, it is highly important to focus on the breath, because not only is it a spiritual food, it is mental food, the research that values the breath for its particular brain improvement capability is extensive and exhaustive now, and it always has been that way. Focus, concentration, memory, the decluttering, the balancing of the mental thoughts, anxiety, which exists in the mind, the brain, as much as it does in the emotional regions of the body, and is obviously triggered and initiated by one or the other. Often it's just looping in that cycle. But also the physical reverence that is paid to the benefits of the breath is just as exhaustive. And so the breath is just multidimensional. It is a quantum nutrient, and we're going to look at how that comes into its own being in the breath. But also just want to point out about how the breath is also the symbolic, which is another level of connection and awareness that is there to be explored, and it's all around. The breath can be so symbolic, and if we start with the first breath, looking at the breath as the most natural and instinctive process that the body undertakes, you see, and to not be in control or in union, not being conscious of that process speaks volumes for our level of detachment from our capacity to heal ourselves or to seek refuge or healing or therapies outside of ourselves, and be so confused as to not understand what is actually going on within ourselves, because we're so far detached or divided from the most natural, basic process that we should be engaged in. It's no wonder why we can become so confused in all other areas. So, conscious breathing exercises consciousness. And if, consciousness is a term that can get thrown around and used in any arena, because everything, if it's here, if you are here, you are conscious to a certain degree. But consciousness is like, we can look at it like saying, it's a level of awareness, a level of partaking in your experience at multiple dimensional states. So we all know, we can all agree that we have a mental body, we have a mind, we have a spirit driving force that kind of animates us, animates the physical. We all agree that we have a physical, material-based body. And what the breath allows you to do, and what it does all on its own, once practicing and exercising, the breath will bring that mental body, that spiritual body, and that physical body into union. Because what you're going to be finding is it takes a lot of mental discipline and focus to channel the breath, and conducting a continuation of breathing and flowing consistently. There's a lot of cons in it, and con in a sense of just bringing together a togetherness or a with. Con is obviously it's ambiguous and used across different, but the language is so powerful, and really understanding language is another level of consciousness and kind of a way to decode truths or hidden truths, just lifting the veil bit by bit. So the breath, it brings into communion a common unity between the mind and the physical body, because once the breathing, and this is one of the benefits, you become so in tune with the physical body, you start to feel yourself. Everyone wants to be feeling yourself, or at least you should be, and you really start to feel yourself, because as this energy transports throughout the body and the systems, throughout the blood, throughout the lymphatic, what you're going to be finding is the breath reaches the spaces in between spaces once practiced, once it's penetrated the barriers and the blockages, these energetic blockages which then turn into chemical blockages and physical blockages. These blocked areas become very acidic, very environmentally friendly for those pathogens or parasites or bad bacteria, the bacteria that doesn't serve the body harmoniously. These are great breeding grounds, and we're talking about the areas of blockage. And what you can start to do with breathing exercises is identify these areas. You can get in tune with your organs, in a sense that we start to listen to our organs. Organs are instruments, ding, ding, ding. And that's getting in tune with your body, with that orchestration, that orchestra of the body. And it's that breath that will take you there. It lets you visit those areas, at certain levels with consistency. It strengthens the mind in your concentration. It acts as a guide because we follow the breath. And when we are exercising this level of consciousness, this level of awareness of ourselves operating at different states in one being, this also gives rise to other levels of being or states. And there are other levels, and the consciousness is the connection between those, and it's kind of a merging into oneness. And that's where the breath, all the meditative arts and practices, they all promote this oneness, this being of oneness, and the breath will take you there. And it will extend outside of yourself, because outside of yourself is all still self. So this will bring, or it will heighten a awareness of your connection to the natural world outside of yourself, which is also partaking in the breathing process, i.e. the trees and the plants, which are involved in this continuous cycle. So really it's like the earth is just in its own respiratory cycle, and we're just an instrument of that. Because when we breathe in, we're receiving the oxygen that is being generated by the plant life around us on the planet. When we breathe out, we're expelling or exhaling the built up toxic waste and toxic gas that has come from the metabolization of the cellular body. It can't stay there because it creates a toxic environment. So when we're all breathing out, we're expelling this carbon dioxide predominantly, and other minor gases and particles. Now, if that was to all get trapped in this sphere that we're in, underneath this atmosphere, we'd be all living in a very toxic environment. So what actually happens is the trees and plants will breathe in the CO2, the carbon dioxide, because nothing is bad, everything has its place and purpose, and that will be good life force for them. They will use it, they will send it to the roots, they will exercise this energy, they will produce fruits, and then their metabolism produces oxygen. Breathe it out for us to breathe in. And it's this communion with nature, because what's actually happening with the breathing exercises and the consciousness, you're actually, this is wholesome healing. So you're raising your vitality, you're raising your electromagnetic field, which is creating your aura, your energy field, which raises your frequency, which then puts you in accessible range to other sentient beings or living organisms that have their own frequency, which have not lowered their frequency, as much as man has. So when you're on the same wavelength as something else, you can then tune in just like a radio to the stations that operate on that wavelength. So, you can hit the avatar state with the plants and the nature. You develop a new connection, a new understanding, and then you realize that, wow, the plants are giving us salt, they're giving us the life force, oxygen or air. They're adding property to the air. They're giving us fruits, they're giving us herbs, they're giving us material to build and shelter. We're really, it really benefits the being, the experience of life, to become more conscious of these things. So more about the wholesome healing. Now, when we're dealing with the breath and breathing work, we're dealing, we say wholesome healing because it's healing mind, body and spirit. And when we say healing, just to clarify, I don't want to give the impression all the time. I know a lot of the movement is all focused on healing, we need to heal, but that also sometimes gives the impression that we're broken, that we're in this state, and to a degree, yeah. But personally, I like to really exercise the mind and, come from different angles. And all the healing process actually is because the body don't really understand anything about healing. This is just a concept that the mind has had to create to describe the process of coming back into balance. Now, the principle of the universe and cosmos is balance, always striving to maintain balance in physiology, chemistry, any level of science. What we know about the body is always involved in a process of homeostasis at every level, cellular level, material, cell level, chemical level, mental level, which is just a process of balance. So there's always this alchemy, the great work going on inside the body via another intelligence, which is another conscious state. So this alchemical process that is going on is actually trying to maintain harmony. So when the mind is trapped in looping thought patterns that do not serve the progression of the being, that will keep you at a certain level of vibration, or keep trapping you into anxious kind of experiences within yourself, which also determine your perceptions of people or experiences or situations. Now the body has to get chemical, it has to release, because the thing is, and this is where the hierarchy of the spirit also takes its presidential place, because what we find is the body will always follow the mind. Hence, going back to wholesome healing, you can heal the body with any faculty. You can physically heal the body. You just turn to the herbs and the fruits, you can detox the body. But if you want a higher power healing, you can go to the mind. It's faster because the body follows the mind. You can basically instruct the glandular chemicals or hormones to be produced, which will initiate detoxification, repair, and restoration. So the mind is a very powerful tool to do this. Why people will just go to, certain types of therapies or certain types of mental healers, because the mind is a higher state of being, which the subservient states or the inferior states are always under the domain of the superior states. You see that, in the reality, in the nations. You'll see in the animal kingdom, you will see in the plant kingdom, you will see within the body. And it's not to also promote an idea of conflict all the time. It's just a hierarchy of principles. And what we find is the higher states are there to maintain harmony and balance. So that's where the mind is, but then we become trapped in the mind sometimes. So what breathing actually does, the breathing exercises, is it can allow you to enter the higher state of spirit. Because if we can't control the mind, and the mind is running, havoc in the body, then it's pretty difficult to heal the body with the mind, because the mind is not under control. However, with breathing, what that does is it enters you into the higher states of spirit. Now from there, that is like what I always will call the high seat of observation. Now you can even observe the mind, but without the language, without judgment. You see what I'm saying? It's you can oversee. And then what you actually do when you're in that higher state is you allow the mind to rest. And anytime anything is at rest, we're dealing with restoration. It can restore these exhausted faculties. It rests is also synonymous with digest. The body will go into a rest and digest state. So when you're digesting, what you're doing is you're breaking down the heavy matter, those heavy energy fields, whether it's food, whether it's waste, whether it's thoughts, whether it's chemicals and cortisol. Your body at rest will restore, and it will also digest. It will break those down, and it will send it through the process of elimination, detoxification and elimination. So when you're sitting in that higher state of consciousness or higher state of spirit, the body, everything underneath it is at rest, because it no longer has to be the big mouth on the block. It can now filter. It can rest assured that there's a higher state at work, governing, controlling the being, and it will all start to trickle down. And that's why, through the breathing, it's often used as a channel to enter the meditative states of mind, or the mindful states of mind, which can be very reflective and can be channeled and used as powerful healing mechanisms. So what we say is, give it a try. And we say try, I say try, because we're dealing with the try, T-R-Y, is synonymous with, I make it synonymous with the triune, the great capstone. And I do that because it's in this three-dimensional state, we're bringing three into one. And that's what the pyramid is, that's what the triangle is. It's an angle of things to look at from a holistic perspective. So when you've got the triangle, you've got the apex, the vortex, which is an accumulation of the energy that is surging, that is rising. And from that apex vortex, we would place the spirit here in this case. And then underneath the spirit, we are divided between the mind and the body, the subservient states of being, the kind of denser states of being. But that's the division. However, in spirit, when you're at the top, when you're at the apex, the highest states, you are actually as one, that you are one shape. You are an accumulation. And it's hard to kind of differentiate when you're at that state, because it is just oneness. It knows nothing else. It knows no such division. And it's that state of mind where then, language can disappear. But visualization and sensation will definitely increase. And, the truth don't lie. I like to say, and truth is in the experience. So I say, when we say give it a try, we mean when you're trying when you're really trying, you are using your mind, you're using your body, you're using your spirit, you are basically channeling all of you into something, into one task. You are attempting something, and that is, really trying. So what you are actually doing when we are trying is you are actually doing. So I don't even like to say too much, depending who we're speaking with. Oh, I'm trying to do this, I'm trying to do that. No, I'm doing it. I'm on a process of perfecting my attempts. So, and in relation to the breathing, give it a try. Sit down and do it 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes in the evening, if that. Get it in as much as you can. Get it in while you're sitting on a bus. Get it in while you're sitting in a car. Get it in while you're sitting anywhere. And even when you're not sitting, make time for breathing. And it will give you back so much more. Time will give you space. And with space, you can do anything. You can make anything in space. Space is a great sphere, verse in itself. And it's a house of creation. My father's house has many mansions, or mansions as houses, and it's just endless creation potential. And that then will extend your time, or even dissolve the time which you think you have or don't have. Because what it also does is it brings you into the present, into the gift of life. And it's from that position that you become centered and self. When you unite the spirit, the mind and the body, you are in your most powerful position to assess any situation, to respond or react to any situation, and to make your decisions about any situation. And that's where we want to be. We want to be centered, we want to be present. And that's the meditative, that's the medium, that's the medicine. It's all about just coming into that center balance. That's that. It's that uniting two divisions, two dual poles into one at the center, and just allowing that force to penetrate and experience that sense of being. And that's what the breath allows you to do, or it will guide you into. Not to mention the fact that you can use the breath as we do in yoga. And now when we go to yoga, it's important. Yoga is known as an art that will yoke one into the other to create a circuit of wholeness. So again, we're using our mind, body and soul and coming into one being. At the same time, we're exercising the body, we're strengthening the body, but a lot of it is about balance. So we go back to the symbolic, because the breath has always been the fundamental tool of yoga. It's always been the fundamental tool of meditation. It's always been the fundamental tool of arts and discipline, or martial arts, because the breath is a very tangible healing mechanism, or balancing mechanism, or strengthening mechanism. So in yoga, we can use the breath to distract, if you like, from the thought patterns that we find it hard to get out of. We can follow the breath, and it will bring us away from the mind or the language or the chitty chatter. We follow the breath. The breath is a guide. Then also what it allows us is it allows our body to become reinvigorated with this prana, with this chi, and with oxygen, which I think is different. You know, a lot of texts will say that the oxygen carries the prana, or what it probably does, but prana or chi or life force, or there's another essence, as we can call it, that is present in the air. And as much as, you know, you look up air and it'll be nitrogen predominantly, which is an essential building substance for the body, for protein, and oxygen and some other minor gases, but I think it's abundant in this other essence of life form, which is so fine, because we're dealing with the finite. We're dealing with we're in the finite. So this infinite fine essence is so fine that we're not going to detect it through science mechanisms. It can only be experienced. And I, for one, think it's a lot to do with the sun rays. It's light. Yeah, so this life force is light. And when you have day or night, and it contains full spectrum light rays, this accumulation is what is present everywhere in the air, in the body. And we have that same source within. So when we're breathing in, now we can cultivate and raise it from our center, from these, or what they'll call the lower regions of the dantian, or the root chakra, or the sacral area where it's stored. So breathing then allows us to pull that with, and different breathing techniques will allow for progressive, attainment of whatever it is your intentions are focused on. So when you're trying to raise prana or chi, there's always an opposing action. In anything, there's always an antagonist and an agonist. So when you're breathing in, you're actually pulling from the base of the spine this hidden occult essence, kundalini then, if you like, up the spine, and the breath is entering the body and doing its work. It's feeding the cellular respiration. It's involved in the gas exchange to ensure that you are getting the carbon dioxide out and you are refueling the blood with oxygen. It increases the blood circulation to ensure that essential nutrients are being delivered to the cells of your body. It stimulates the lymphatic system, which is the body's main detoxification processing system. It's 3 times as big as the blood system. It deals with the intracellular waste fluid, which is essential, especially when we're talking about disease. So we're going to do a whole focused workshop on the lymphatic system, because it is a key to health, a vital key to health. It's no wonder that we don't know much about it in the way the industry is set up. So, breathing stimulates all these bodily functions, and also what it does is it feeds the brain and the mind, especially when we're breathing in through the nostrils. We're going straight to the hemispheres first, because brain cells require twice as much oxygen as any other cell to function. The oxygen that we're breathing in is initiating the release of energy, ATP. So when we use oxygen to cultivate energy in the body, if you go to biomedicine or body mechanics, when we use oxygen to generate energy, it can produce up to 6 to 10 times the amount of ATP units as anaerobic respiration, which is basically just exercising without oxygen. So oxygen is fundamental to the body's energy stores and releasing those energy stores, and also the digestion process, because we don't get any energy if we're not digesting properly, and that goes for the cells of the body as much as it goes for the digestive system in its physiology. And that's another topic that we touched on and we will expand on. But definitely, like I say, especially in Kemetic Yoga, there's great emphasis placed on the rule of 4 breathing method. And what that actually does is ensures that you're taking and you're present for your deep inhalations. You use the breath to channel or guide your postures or movements. We use the breath to channel vitality, because all this is just a blockage of energy. As my teacher told me, yes sir, he told me that vitality is dependent on the ease of breath to travel around the body. And it's true, this has been said by so many great teachers and healers, of the past. So many from every continent has always alluded to the same point, the way energy travels and circulates. So when we're increasing our circulation, it's not just blood, it's not just lymphatic system, it's not just mental thoughts and patterns. We're talking about chi, we're talking about vitality, we're talking about life force, we're talking about prana. So it's very essential, and we'll take an inhalation, we will have a pause. This allows the gas exchange. This allows the breath to get to those hard to reach places and to get to those spaces in between spaces. This also allows for a very